First of all, know what you want in a job. And I get it. If you're unemployed, you need a job, and you feel like you can't be too picky and you don't want to say no to things. But it really is more attractive to employers when you're able to say, listen, here are a few things that I'm looking for. This is why I thought to apply to your position. Name something that you saw interesting on their job description. When you can do that, it really sets you apart from other job seekers. And so I would recommend being a little bit selective in where you're applying and know what you're looking for. I think, unfortunately, a lot of job seekers think they're limiting themselves by not applying to every single position, but I think you're limiting yourself by refusing to narrow it down at least a little bit. So that's one thing to think about for 2021. And then I think also just focus on what you can control. There are a lot of things in the job search that are outside of your control, like how long it takes a company to get back to you, or how many rounds they put into their interview process. Sometimes it's a lot more than you'd want. But I think you'll do best if you just focus on playing your game and doing the things you can control. So, how many people did you network with this week, or how are you tracking things and following up with those employers that are taking too long to get back to you, instead of getting angry and lashing out or showing frustration in your emails, things like that. And then network. Don't just apply online, be networking. There are hundreds of people applying online for the average position. I think it's between 1 to 200, depending on what industry or whose study or data you look at. So that's really important. And then last, I think just don't cut corners on there are tasks that I call effort tasks. I would say don't cut corners on those effort tasks. For example, researching the company before your job interview. That doesn't take any talent. It doesn't take high intelligence or specific knowledge of the industry or anything. It's just go on Google News, type the company name, read a recent article, go in with a great question, go into your interview with a great question. You could say, I just read a news story about how you're launching a new product line of XYZ. Can you tell me more about what you're hoping that will do as the company continues to grow? And if you're able to go in with like a really relevant current question like that, it's going to immediately set you apart. It's all effort. There's no talent there, in my opinion. One thing that's not new, unfortunately, I think there's going to be a lot of people applying online for each position, like I just hinted at, or we had just touched on that. So that makes it even more important to keep networking and finding ways to do something different. I always tell people, just the more you can do things differently than everybody else in your job search, the better. So find at least one thing you can do differently. Send a video to the company, follow up on LinkedIn after you applied. Then for other trends in 2021, I think people are going to be needing to change industries. Not everybody, and I hope if you're watching this, it's not you, but I think as we recover and get through this whole, the last year has been very different than any other year. I think things will recover to some extent, but it's never going to be back to how it was in 2018 or 2019. And I have a stat here. I took a note of it. Let me find it. Oh yeah, so I read I think it was a Forbes article, and an airline exec was saying that he estimates that 19 to 36% of business trips are gone forever. And people have just realized that you can get it done on Zoom. You can close a big deal on Zoom, and you don't have to fly from New York to LA. So that's just one example of an industry that's it's never going to be back to how it was. So I think people will need to change industries possibly, or look at ways to pivot their skills, unfortunately. I think the way that most posts actually pop into my head is I'm doing work, I'm doing things. I'm either like editing an old article of mine to make it better, or I'm answering a job seeker's question via email, and it sparks the idea of a post. So a lot of the ideas, the more I'm working and doing my actual job, which is writing content for job seekers, helping job seekers, the more ideas I get. But then I do schedule them in advance. I use Buffer. It's a free website. They have a premium plan, but I only use the free version, honestly, and schedule it out in advance. And I usually just think, what's the takeaway here? Why will people care? Is this actually helping people? And if not, I won't post it, because it's really not about what I want to say. It's about what's going to help people and what do they care about. If if I'm only writing for me, then it's not going to do well on LinkedIn. I always try to mix up the different types. And I think even if I did find one like magic formula, I think if I just posted that every week in a different, like a slightly different variation, people would get sick of it. But just off the top of my head, I think posts that have like a positive sentiment tend to do well. I think job searching can be pretty frustrating and difficult and challenging. And so posts that offer encouragement or remind people that, you know, they're closer to the finish line than they think, and you know, you only need one job, things like that. So positive posts. And then I think people seem to enjoy posts that give them a new way of looking at things. So I think recently I've been posting about networking, and I've kind of explained, you know, here's why the typical long message that people send doesn't get a reply. Here's an idea of what to try instead. You know, here's why this is going to work most likely. And people in the comments often are like, oh, wow, I totally didn't realize why everybody's been ignoring my messages. I can't wait to go try this new idea. So anything that shifts people's mindsets. Or one other, I guess, is like dispelling popular myths. I did a post on why I don't think you always need a cover letter. I think there are situations where a cover letter makes a lot of sense. And there are also scenarios where I would personally skip it and save the time, because time has value, and it costs your time to write that cover letter. So posts like that have also done pretty well. Those are just a few. There's more, but those are like off the top of my head. You only need one good interview. You're one good interview away. You only need one job offer. And I think it's really tempting I've said this before in other interviews and podcasts, but it's really tempting to look at the statistics, and maybe you read like 18% of people job searching right now have been doing it for 6 months or more, and it can be really intimidating. But in the end, I think some of the stats, they don't matter as much as they seem, and you really only need one job. So just focus on your game, focus on doing your tasks. And when you get that one job offer, none of the statistics matter really. You just got to get that one.